So we gave the players the day off until late in the evening, so the coaches could try to get caught up from the travel, and worked them out a little bit last night. Guys are doing good. We run blocked much better, which I said after the game. I was accurate that we were able to match guys up pretty good. Obviously, the running back ran well, and defense played very well in the second half. I thought the coaching at halftime in the second quarter was excellent, and punter was really good, down him inside the, 16, 11, and 5, or whatever he did. Made a big difference. And then in the end, JT made a nice play by getting a hand on the field goal. So good game for us. Tough place to play. They do a nice job out there. Glad to be 3-0. Got to get a lot better. Playing a better team this week, so looking forward to this week's competition.
What's the trip back from a place like that like after you win a game that way? Pretty exciting, or is everybody just ready to get to sleep?
I mean, it's you're late, so you get on a plane. We sat on the runway for an hour. Some kind of software problems between the tower there in Boise and back in Houston, so we sat there on the plane for an hour. And then, of course, by the time we land, get in the bus, get back, you're looking at almost 7 in the morning. So most everybody's asleep.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Taylor.
Oh, just what was the celebration like afterwards? I know we saw the video of Cale Cabanis getting in on the dancing and everything. What was that vibe like after the game?
Well, I tried to get him up there. The reason I did it was to get him up there, and his dancing skills are not good at all. Very stiff when it comes to that, and really shy. But a great moment. I wanted him to be able to enjoy that. We have 85 guys on scholarship, and we carry 135 on our roster. So you have a number of guys that don't get their school paid for. They're doing it on their own. They love it, and those guys always have a special place for me. And for him to have that moment, I wanted him to be able to enjoy it.
Mike, I got a text from Tommy Tubbs on the field right after the game, and it read, please, 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 please tell Mike Gundy thanks for giving Cale an opportunity.
Well, see, we have a little history there with, he actually played on Gunner's baseball team when they were little, 6 or 7, so we knew him for a while, and then of course, he made a lot of plays for Norman North, but he's a good kid. He works hard, does it every day, and just kept going. And it's a perfect example of what a coach says. You never know when you might get your chance. So we had an unfortunate situation with injuries at his position, and he gets bumped up the depth chart 3 or 4 slots real quick, and makes the travel roster on a Wednesday, and then secures the game with a catch on a Saturday night.
Another thing along the same lines on that, Tommy has told me a couple of times that Billy, his dad, before he passed away, he came to some practices up here, and he really, Tommy told me, he said he liked you a lot, that he saw some similarities.
Well, we had good discussions. When the first time he came up, I went over and visited with him, and we had really good discussions and about a lot of things, about coaching and athletics and young people, and how you change throughout your career. As a head coach, the longer you do it, you kind of get a little better at it. And I enjoyed my conversations with him. Obviously, he's got a really good personality, which we all know. And he's not scared to speak his mind, which we all know. And he plays an exciting brand of basketball, kind of what we've done here in football, started 15 years ago. So I enjoyed my time with Coach.
Mike, you may have touched on this post-game, but Cale wasn't the only receiver you had out there. Was it matchup? Was it what Spencer may have seen to go his direction instead of somebody else?
Well, it's based on play called and coverage. There's 2 or 3 things that go into each play call, particularly a pass. And so he went with the ball where he's supposed to go with the ball. And it worked out well for us.
Regardless of sport, it seems like the scholarship guys, when they see a walk-on get that opportunity and do what like Cale did Saturday, that they are more excited than maybe the walk-on themselves, because they know that they're putting in more, and especially off the field without having a scholarship. How big is that to see the scholarship guys rally around someone like Cale Saturday?
Well, these guys, they enjoy seeing their buddies and non-scholarship and or backups make plays because they watch him practice all the time. They're in meetings with him all the time. So when they get in a game, they enjoy that. You see that all the time. And so, that's just the team concept, that they like their buddies to do good. The unselfish part of what we do in football. That's why I think college football is so great, because the world is selfish. We live in a very selfish world right now. People only care about themselves. Football kind of takes that away, the team concept.
Along the lines of that, too, that locker room, there have been a lot of times in the past with some teams that I think if you won a game that way in the locker room, based on expectations, it would have been frustration. There would have been some frustration. That locker room realized, between injuries, where they were playing, who they were playing, that was a hard-fought, really worthy win. Well,
they've had to adapt and overcome a lot of situations this year, different things that are somewhat unusual, and so you just look across the country. You might have 4 or 5 teams that are playing exceptionally well right now, and most everybody else is essentially beating themselves. So if you can avoid beating yourself, it give you a chance in most games. And so I think our players up to this point have understood that. The things that can really hurt you as a football team, if you can avoid those, then you're going to have a chance in the fourth quarter. And that's really where we're at right now with this team.
I know there were some bad calls either way, but did you ever get a clarification, or even since you got back, a clarification on the roughing the passer? That even when we went back and looked at it, it just...
Yeah, they missed the call.
What do you tell Brock or another defender in a situation like that when they make a play like that and it's called against them even though it's a missed call?
Bad breaks and crooked refs.
Mike, I know it's early in the week, but do you anticipate having some receivers back, or are you thinking you're going to be in a similar situation?
We'll know more on Wednesday.
Have you ever had a team like this, or really over the year and 3 games, that have been hit with injuries the way that you guys have lately?
I've never ever, that I know of in 31 or 2 years as a coach, started 2 true freshmen at one position. And we've done it a couple times this year, so no, I've never been in this situation.
You're not crazy, Mike, I know, about getting your quarterback hit. Is this going to be one of those years, because of injuries and limitations, where you just take a deep breath and hope Spencer rides it out, because he's going to have to help in that regard?
And you talk in what area? Rushing the ball? Yeah, we have quarterback run game. Spencer is a good runner. He's explosive. He's dangerous when he runs, so he needs to run the ball. We don't ever want to get him hit, and we always try to minimize the blow, but somewhat, there's just times that he has to do that based on the scheme we see. So he's got to be able to carry the ball. He's got to be able to rush the football.
Obviously, True Sterling being out for the season is a big hit for the defense, but what do you see in Jason Taylor's ability to step up into that starting role?
Well, he's been around a while. He's experienced. He's played in big situations. He's one of those guys that seems to play a lot better in games than what some people or coaches might expect. He likes to play in games. He's committed to the team, and he's tough. So that gives him an edge up on today's generation, just those 3 things. And that's why he's played pretty good when he's been in the game.
Did you notice those attributes of him in high school when you were recruiting him? Did you anything stand out about his playmaking ability then?
Well, all my buddies back home told me those things about him. Now, these are just guys I grew up with that lived there. These weren't coaches. He had good reports from his coaches. And he'd been on a team, won a lot of football games, won championships, so on and so forth. That makes a difference. But the word on the street was he was tough and he was competitive. There might be measurables or certain things he does that don't match up to what some people might think you have to have, but some of his other abilities can make up for that, and so far that's what's happened.
You heard those reports about him, but then do you remember the first time you actually watched him play?
Do I remember the first time he started playing?
Do you remember just the first time you saw him play, kind of what?
Oh, in high school?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I mean, we saw a video on him when he was young. It'd be his junior year in high school. We saw some video on him. We don't get out much anymore to watch games because of the limitations, so you don't see as many games anymore.
know playmaking ability can be a vague kind of attribute for a player, but what are the things that he has that make him?
Well, he's got good vision. He has a pretty good feel for the game. He sees things, maybe a count before other people do. You know, those are things that you can't coach. Just his vision and awareness. He's intelligent, so I'm guessing that he studies a lot of tape on his own, and he gets a feel for when things start to develop. He can kind of see what's happening. Would be the reason that he's been able to come in and play pretty well without being a guy that's out there all the time. And I would say that that's what he's got going for him at this time.
Forgive me if you were asked this after the Boise State game, but what was your perspective of him blocking that field goal? Did you realize that he did it at first?
No, I didn't know it was blocked till I was in the locker room because I watched it come off his foot, and I thought it was low, but I didn't realize that he had blocked it until I was in the locker room. And then, of course, I watched it on tape. It was a low kick, but he got a pretty good piece of it. You know, you can't determine whether it might have gone through. You can't tell. You might have line drive through there. I can't say one way or the other based on the angle, but I was unaware of that until I got in the locker room.
What does the depth now look like at safety with the loss of Trey and having to bump Jason up now to starter?
Well, you've got Flanagan that's out there. You got Taylor. You got Harper. You got McAllister. You got Peel. You got Rucker. You know, we can roll those guys. If something happened, we could put Jarek around. You know, he can play those spots. So we have some flexibility there, and we have some depth there. Unlike at wideout, you know, we've got some maturity and some depth, so we can move those guys around a little bit.
So you don't have to worry about possibly pushing Malcolm back there.
Who?
Rodriguez.
What about him?
You don't have to worry about possibly pushing him back there if there's
Well,
more injuries.
we're not to that point. Right. I mean, you know, hopefully we don't get to that point.
With Jalen Warren, were there attributes you saw in him during the recruiting process or the transfer process that you thought he would fit in well here?
Well, the word on the street was I mean, he was a good player, he was unselfish, and he was tough. So that's enough for me. The latter two being very important in this generation of kids that play the game, and so far is held to be true. We've asked him to block on certain plays. He blocks like a tight end. When he runs hard, and he's unselfish. So he's very valuable.
Does the game plan at running back change at all after a performance like that in terms of the way you approach things?
In what area?
In terms of carries and distributing them.
Well, he pumped it to him 32 times. I mean, I'd like to not do that, but he's going to get his carries.
Mike, Chip Dill's first year was a little bit of a rude awakening. He's admitted that since then. Wasn't familiar with this part of the country, certainly wasn't familiar with the challenges of Big 12 offenses. Were you worried about him at all that first year?
Well, I wasn't worried about him. I just was waiting for him to kind of come around and realize that the things that you hear in this league are true. He also stepped in when we had fantastic quarterback play, fantastic wide receiver play. So those guys that year that he came in, we had a group of quarterbacks and receivers in this league that were just through the roof. And so one thing about Jim is he will tell you, he'll just say, hey, I was wrong, as you just said he told you. And he's said it before in meetings. He's good about that. And then he's smart enough to try and fix it instead of being stubborn and saying, well, I'm going to out-scheme you. When in this league, that's not really possible with skill kids. So I wasn't worried. I was just wanting him to come around because he has to come around on his own. I mean, I don't call defenses. I don't draw defenses up. So he's got to realize this is not great. Here's the adjustments we need to make.
You alluded to the fact that peeking into meetings of his, it was just a little different vibe. He had a different way with his dudes. Do you have a better sense of explaining what makes that unique?
Are you saying that he has a different way with the players?
Yeah, you alluded to, I was going back into my notes, and you called it it's just different in there than other coaches I've experienced.
Right.
Can you put your finger on what makes that unique?
Well, you know, I've said this before that, you know, he thinks a little differently than people. You know, he's a city Philadelphia guy that has an Ivy League degree, and he was a head coach in the Ivy League. So that's a little bit different for what we do compared to this league, just on a daily basis. And, then he was at, up in that part of the country, then he was at Duke. And so it's just a little different than what we do here. And so his approach is, with our players, is a little rougher and cerebral combined than what normal coaches are. And it's a little bit of being in the streets of Philadelphia is kind of what I joke with him about. He's kind of a streets of Philly guy, and he's an Ivy League guy. So there's it's just a little different the way he coaches. Like he's on those guys all the time and more aggressive than what most coaches are today. But they understand it because he'll come back and love them up and tells them they do a good job, so they get it. It's the parenting concept. If they know you love them and care about them, it's okay. So he has a pretty good mixture with them, the way he gets on them. But they accept it.
You said before that coaches tend to do better if they understand the culture here, whether they've been with you for a long time or they're at least from this part of the country. Jim would be sort of, I guess, an exception to that, a guy who sort of adapted.
Right. So they all coach differently. And I do not try to change who somebody is. We're all genetically different, and some of us are quiet, some of us may be loud, some of us are opinionated, some of us don't offer our opinion. So they're completely different. Rattay might go through a practice, and I never even hear him say one word, and Jim might go through 2 minutes of a practice, and I hear him say 400 words. So it's just a different personality. In reference to our culture, they have to understand the concept of what we're trying to get accomplished here and how we're trying to do it. I'm okay with however you want to coach your players, as long as your players know they care about you. And we don't belittle them and beat them down verbally. I don't believe in that. So he has ways of doing things where he doesn't direct things at a certain player, more to group. Like, hey, you guys need to get your stuff together, or instead of you need to get your stuff together. Two different ways to handle people, not just coaching. He does a good job of that.
Coach, you had some knockdown dragouts with K-State recently, even last year up there with kind of a grinder. And with what they're going through this season, different positions, since this is a little bit of a look in the mirror, both teams are kind of...
We'll be in a fourth quarter game. I mean, we're going to be in fourth quarter games, from here on out. We lost some pretty good firepower for the year on offense, and so you're trying to do the best you can to manage and work together as a team and rush the football and use the clock and keep the defense off the field and play good special teams and try to find a way to win the game other than just saying, we have guys injured and I don't know what we're going to do. So. It's just like what happened Saturday. We rushed the football effectively enough. We had the ball 21 and a half minutes in the second half, so they only had it 9. And we were really good in target punting and special teams, and that's what won the game for us.
How have you seen Casey kind of adjust to this the last year plus with the offensive line injuries last year, now all the receivers? How have you seen him kind of adjust this as a coordinator his first year and a half on the job?
Well, he's doing good. Is it difficult on him? Sure it is. When you're in the situation that we were in last year, and then unfortunately with where we're at now at wideout, you have to give in and go away from some coaching philosophies you might have and try to do what is best to give yourself and the team a chance to win. It's as simple as that. You play the hand you've been dealt. You can't fold all your cards. And so he's done a good job. And his patience has been really good, because it can be discouraging for a coach when you get in a situation that we're in now offensively where your back's against the wall and there's not a lot of answers. And it's difficult to practice, right? You got to be real careful in practice now. I mean, about one more guy goes down and, you're in the full house wishbone. So you got to be real careful about how you practice. So it's a big picture, but he's done okay.
You talked about combating those injuries and inexperience on the offense with adjusting some plays and doing some different things in the scheme. I don't know how long that takes, but did you feel like you kind of mixed more of that in against Boise State, and could we see more of that as a Big 12 player?
Well, we rushed the football better, and we blocked. There's the majority of the runs that we had in that game Saturday night were blocked effectively. Prior to that, it wasn't blocked effectively. That's what I said in here. We had some runs because guys made players miss, but that's not really how you draw it up. Those plays were blocked, and that's a big part of what we need to accomplish now. We have to block, and we have to block good based on where we're at.
Back to the film, what did you see of the offensive line when you got to watch it with Hunter back in there?
Well, they played good. Is that what you're asking me? They blocked effectively and got hat on hat and allowed our back to make some cuts. We had several times in that game where our backs are up in the line of scrimmage and are hitting air, where the way it used to be around here. And so now each week, or from here on out, basically, it's going to be more difficult. I mean, Boise's a good team, but their depth is not going to be what it is in this conference. Okay, this conference can run backups out there and still be pretty effective. So each week it gets more difficult, for us to be effective rushing the football. That's why it's so important that we somehow find a way to do it with where we're at throwing the ball right now.
How much did Hunter Woodard help when you have him back in that line to kind of solidify that too?
Well, he played good. He was a co-player of the game. That's how well he played on offense. And it's hard for an offensive lineman to be a co-player of a game because people just don't watch that much and get credit like they do skilled kids. But he was a co-player of the game, played really well.
And back, does this feel like maybe your best five up front that you guys can have right now?
The best what?
The best five guys on the line.
I would say that when we go out to practice Tuesday, if all these guys that we're playing are back playing Tuesday, that'll be where the best that we've been so far. Yes.
Is it hard to embrace kind of having to be what you are on offense because you've been so different? And
well, it's you have to have patience with the young players. I've said this a number of times, but you'll see some really good plays and then you'll see a lot of mistakes, and you just have to be patient with them, particularly the ones that went on the road. And it's different for them. Like defense, our defense was okay on the road because they're veteran guys and they've all played. It's not a big deal. But some of those young guys, that we had a couple procedure penalties, we lined up wrong a couple times. Those are new guys playing on the road, and it's just different for them. So patience is really important right now for me and for Coach Dunn and everybody on offense. And just try to get what we can out of them and not what we think we're going to get, because till they get seasoned a little bit, they're not going to give you much more than that.
You mentioned that Coach Dunn has had good patience with them. What are some specific examples of ways you've seen him work with the young guys and show that patience through practice?
Well, I just watch him at practice, and on game day, he doesn't panic and get mad and scream and yell, which is the first sign of losing your patience and being disgusted with something, because that can happen. And it's his guys too, so that's more weight on his shoulders. And when I've watched him at practice and listened on the headphones during the game, he's been good. He's been calm, and that's a sign of some maturity.
Is Kansas State changed? Obviously, without Skylar Thompson, it's different for them, but how much different? I mean, they're still going to run what they run. Right?
To a certain extent. I think that, obviously I don't want to speak for them, but the other guys' experience that he brought in and just awareness, I'm guessing, and then, ability to run and really have that threat would be what I would say right offhand.
Any concern with Alex Hale? He had a field goal miss up there, and he had an extra point on the first one. That, special teams have been good, but any concern with his kicking?
So he's got a technical issue that we know what it is, and we've identified it. Now it's just a matter of getting enough reps to get it cleaned up, and it should solve the problem.
Coach, after Tulsa, you said you wish you could get out of the quarterback a little better. This 8 inch boy that you guys knocked out Nate Bachmeier quite a bit. How impressed were you with your ability to kind of shift that?
I thought we've rushed the quarterback well, and we did it consistently throughout the game. We didn't get into a lull. They had a track meet going on us the first quarter and a half, but Boise's known for that, and we knew that. So my message to the team before the game was that they're fast starters. They always have been. You can go back years and years and years and years, okay? They do a really good job in scheming their first 20 plays of the game. They use multiple formations, different sets, different unbalanced sets, different bunch sets, motion, shifts, movements, a lot of things. They're really good at it. So you have to try to match their intensity early on the game, and then it settles down, which is exactly what happened. But we didn't match it. They were good at it. They got rid of the ball fast. They didn't hold the ball. They had their starters schemed up to where they didn't have to hold the ball in the pocket. And then once we kind of got going, it got into a normal flow of a game. We were able to get some pressure on him and hit him. Several times he made throws, but we hit him right afterwards. So it was much better, and we didn't really have a lull in the game like we did against Tulsa.
What did Rashad Owens show you? It's a position change for him, if I'm not mistaken, to move up to the...
Right, he's worked 3 positions now, which is unfair to him, but we don't have an option because we have to have guys ready in case something happened. He's got to maybe play somewhere else. And he made a couple third down catches and then had a drop. But he's continued to improve over the last month and show that he has capability of making a few plays on game day. During the game, I didn't think, when I just saw things with the naked eye without watching tape, I didn't think he blocked very good. But then after watching the tape, he did block pretty good. In fact, a couple of our big runs were based on him blocking well. So he's coming along.
Mike, you talked about the TV contracts coming up and things like that. Is there any concern that you're on ESPN or ESPN Plus again for a Big 12 game? Is that something you're concerned about?
With what?
Look at what conference realignment is. You're trying to get more people to watch. You get put on ESPN Plus.
Well, the conference is realigned. That's over.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't understand all that. That stuff's over my head. I said this a week ago, and I'll say it again. With the way it played out for our conference, the remaining 8 teams couldn't have played out any better, period. Now, with what happens with teams leaving the league or when they come in and what happens after 24, that's up to all the attorneys and the CEOs and the ADs. That's way over my head. That's one thing I don't have to worry about. But I know this, that in my opinion, the schools that are brought into this league is going to really drive that market up based on what people's thoughts were 6 months ago. Okay, that's my opinion on the schools that are coming in and the location of them. So based on who plays where and what games and all that, I don't know enough about that to really speak intelligently.
One last thing. You were pretty happy with the number of people that went out to
It was
Boise.
awesome, yeah.
And you got a big conference opener this week, and obviously margins for error are tight. You need a pretty good crowd packed in this place.
Yeah, I mean, you have 2 3-0 teams, and you're going to have a 6 o'clock game. The weather's supposed to be perfect, so should have a huge tailgating, which our tailgates have been huge. Should have a lot of people to walk, and maybe we need to reduce the beer prices so not so many of them don't go out at halftime and drink. Maybe we need to get it to where they can buy it in here. To keep them going, but anyway, I would expect a big crowd and them to be rowdy and do a good job Saturday night.
What other positions did you have Rashad Owens at? Running back and then what else?
No. All 3 wideout positions. I hope he doesn't have to play running back. If he does, I'm gonna let somebody else take this one over. So all 3 wideout positions. He has to play on the right, the left, and the slot. Good. All right. Thank you.